The sun had not yet risen when the forest began to scream. Branches snapped like dry bones. Birds burst from their sleep. The earth trembled beneath spinning tires as a black jeep tore through the narrow path, its headlights slicing wildly through the darkness. Inside the vehicle, Amina gripped the seat with trembling hands. The brakes had failed. The driver was gone, thrown from the jeep moments earlier when the road curved too sharply. Now the machine obeyed no one, racing toward death with a billionaire trapped helplessly inside. Her scream vanished into the forest. From the edge of the village, a figure moved. They called him Kaka the Mad. He slept where he wished, spoke to trees, laughed at nothing, and ran barefoot through thorns like pain did not exist. Children mocked him. Elders ignored him. Mothers warned their daughters to stay away. But that morning, Kaka ran like the wind itself had chosen him. His feet barely touched the ground as he chased the roaring jeep, his breath steady, his eyes burning with focus. No madness lived in them now, only purpose. The villagers who saw him froze in disbelief. "No human can run like that," someone whispered. Kaka leapt. His body slammed onto the hood, metal screaming beneath him as the jeep bounced over rocks. Branches tore at his skin. Blood streaked his chest. He did not slow. He crawled toward the windshield, smashed his fist through the glass, and grabbed the steering wheel. The jeep swerved violently. A massive tree rushed toward them. With a final, impossible twist of strength, Kaka turned the wheel. The jeep stopped. 1 inch. 1 breath. Silence swallowed the forest. Amina stepped out, her knees weak, her silk dress stained with dust and fear. She stared at the man before her, barefoot, bleeding, wild-haired, breathing like he had only just awakened. Who are you?" she asked. Kaka said nothing. He looked at the broken jeep, at the rising sun piercing the trees, then turned and walked back into the forest as if nothing extraordinary had happened. By the time the villagers arrived, he was gone. The next morning, the village awoke to the sound of engines, smooth, expensive, unfamiliar. 3 black cars rolled in, followed by men in tailored suits and polished shoes that feared dust. Lawyers, accountants, witnesses of power. They asked one question: "Where is Kaka?" The villagers stared at one another, confused, suspicious, afraid. When they finally found him sitting beneath the old Irako tree, chewing sugarcane, the men approached carefully, as if madness were contagious. They placed a suitcase at his feet. Inside was more money than the village had seen in generations. Land documents, legal seals, ownership papers. Kaka was now the legal owner of half the eastern farmland. A trust fund followed, enough to feed his bloodline for lifetimes. The villagers gasped. The madman was rich, but Amina's final request fell heavier than all the gold combined. "Kaka," the lawyer said gently, "Madam Amina wishes you to marry her daughter." A silence fell so thick, even the birds refused to sing. Layla, educated abroad, elegant, untouched by village dust, a bride for a man they had mocked. Kaka looked up slowly. For the first time, the villagers saw clarity in his eyes. And somewhere far away, a young woman named Layla would soon return home, unaware that her fate had already been written by a man the world had misunderstood. The village would whisper about that marriage for decades, but none of them would ever again dare to call Kaka mad. Layla Amina Rahman stepped off the plane with the quiet confidence of someone who had lived among glass towers and polished floors for most of her life. The heat of the village struck her first, raw, unfiltered, alive. It clung to her skin like a memory she had almost forgotten. She adjusted her sunglasses and scanned the dusty road where her mother's driver waited. "Welcome home, madam," the driver said, bowing slightly. Home. The word felt strange. On the long drive to the estate, Layla finally asked the question that had burned in her chest since her mother's call from the hospital. "Tell me again," she said calmly. "Who is Kaka?" The driver hesitated. "They call him the madman of the village." Layla turned sharply. "And my mother wants me to marry him?" "Yes, madam." The driver's voice dropped. "But he saved her life." Layla said nothing for the rest of the journey, staring out the window as mud houses passed by, children waved, and women paused their grinding stones to watch the unfamiliar luxury glide through their world. That night, Layla could not sleep. She replayed her mother's words. He didn't ask for anything, Layla. Not money, not praise. He saved me and disappeared. Gratitude explained the land, the money, the trust. But marriage, that felt like something else entirely. Kaka felt the village change before he saw it. People greeted him now. Children no longer threw stones. Women offered him food. Men bowed their heads, unsure how to speak to someone who was suddenly richer than them all. He hated it. The Irako tree was the only place that felt honest. That was where Layla found him. She wore no jewels that day, no silk, just a simple dress and sandals already coated with dust. Her hair was tied back, her eyes sharp. "You're Kaka," she said. He looked up slowly. For a moment, she saw what others never had: intelligence layered beneath scars, watchfulness behind silence. "Yes," he replied. One word. Her breath caught. "So you can speak." "I always could." "Then why didn't you?" Kaka stood, towering over her, his presence calm but unyielding. "Because no one ever asked me anything worth answering." The words struck her harder than an insult. She swallowed. "Why did you save my mother?" Kaka's gaze drifted toward the forest. "Because she was going to die. That's all. That's enough." Layla studied him closely now, not the madman, not the legend, but the man. "Do you know what she's asking of you?" she asked. "Yes." "And you accept it?" Kaka met her eyes for the first time fully. "That decision," he said quietly, "belongs to you." The village erupted. Old men gathered at dawn, arguing in hushed tones. How can such a woman marry him? He doesn't even know his father. He lives like an animal. But there were other whispers, too. He outran a machine. He faced death without fear. Madness doesn't do that. Layla walked through it all, the stairs, the judgment, the curiosity, until she reached her mother's bedside. Amina's voice was weak, but her eyes were fierce. "Do you hate me for this?" she asked. Layla took her hand. "No, but I need to understand." Amina smiled faintly. "People like Kaka are dangerous," she said softly. "Not because they are mad, but because they are free. The world punishes that." Layla frowned. "So you want to cage him with marriage?" Amina shook her head. "I want to protect him, and I want you to see him." Layla said nothing. But that night, she dreamed of a man running through fire without burning. It was the village priest who finally broke the silence. He came to Layla one evening, leaning heavily on his staff. "You deserve to know who Kaka really is," he said. They walked together beneath the moon. "Kaka was once called Kasim," the priest continued. "He was the brightest child this village ever saw. Taught himself to read. Fixed radios before he was 10. Layla stopped walking. "What happened?" The priest's voice trembled. "Greed. Injustice. Men in power." Kasim had spoken against a wealthy landowner who poisoned a river for profit. When the case was buried, Kasim was beaten nearly to death. Something in him broke, but not the mind. The trust. "So he chose silence," Layla whispered. "Yes, and they called him mad because it was easier than admitting guilt." Tears burned her eyes. She finally understood. The wedding day arrived without celebration. No drums, no gold, just truth. Layla stood before Kaka beneath the Irako tree. "I don't pity you," she said, "and I won't save you." He nodded. "I don't need saving, but I will walk beside you," she continued. "If you want that." For the first time, Kaka smiled. Not wildly, not strangely, just like a man who had waited a long time to be seen. The village watched in stunned silence as the so-called madman and the billionaire's daughter joined hands, not as a reward, not as charity, but as equals. And from that day on, the forest remembered his footsteps, not as madness, but as legacy. Peace never announces itself when it leaves. For a few months after the wedding beneath the Irako tree, the village settled into an uneasy calm. Kaka, now known again by his given name, Kasim, began to rebuild the land Amina had given him. Not into estates or mansions, but into farms, schools, and a small clinic with open doors. Layla stayed. She learned the rhythm of village life, the patience of planting, the humility of waiting, the dignity of listening. At night, Kasim spoke more, slowly, carefully, like a man testing language after years of silence. But not everyone celebrated the change. Far beyond the village, a man watched. His name was Bako Dantala, the landowner whose crime Kasim had once exposed. The river poisoning scandal that had disappeared years ago had begun to resurface, quietly but dangerously, after Amina's lawyers reopened environmental records. And the name at the center of it all had returned like a ghost. Kasim. The attack came at night. Men with covered faces set fire to the new grain store, then vanished into the dark. By morning, ashes lay where hope had grown. The villagers panicked. He's brought trouble back to us. We were safe before. Some looked at Kasim with fear once again. Layla stood before them, her voice steady but sharp. Fear does not mean guilt, she said, and silence will not save you. That night, Kasim made a decision he had avoided for years. I will speak, he told Layla, not for revenge, but for truth. What followed stunned the nation. With Amina's support, Kasim testified publicly. Documents resurfaced. Witnesses found courage. The poisoned river, the buried deaths, the stolen land, everything spilled into the open. Bako Dantala fell. His empire collapsed under the weight of its own crimes. At the final hearing, Kasim was asked one last question. Why did you stay silent for so long? He looked into the camera. Because I thought silence was safety, he said. But silence only protects evil. The courtroom fell still. Across the country, people whispered his name, not as a madman, but as a survivor. Victory did not come without cost. The attention overwhelmed Kasim. Old memories clawed at him. Some nights, Layla found him sitting alone, shaking, staring at nothing. She never pushed. She simply sat beside him. Healing, she learned, was not loud. It was patient and slow. The villagers, ashamed now, came one by one, apologizing, offering hands, rebuilding what had burned. Kasim accepted their help, not because he had forgotten, but because he had chosen to forgive. Years passed. The village changed. Children learned to read beneath the Irako tree. The river ran clear again. The clinic saved lives weekly. Farmers earned fairly. And Kasim, he never chased power. When asked why, he smiled gently. I've seen what power does when it forgets people. Layla bore him 2 children, curious, barefoot, fearless. At night, Kasim told them stories of forests that listened and trees that remembered. They never heard the word mad in those stories. When Kasim died, he did not die rich in money. He died rich in impact. The village buried him beneath the Irako tree where truth had been spoken and lives had changed. No titles were carved on his grave. Only words. He was not mad. He was early. And the world finally caught up. Long after, when elders told children the story of the man who outran a jeep, they spoke with reverence, not fear. And the forest still remembered his footsteps, not as madness, but as courage. End of story, core lesson. Society often labels what it does not understand. But truth, though delayed, always finds its voice. And those once called mad may become the reason others are free. So if you enjoy these stories and you think that life can still change even when there is no hope, support their channel by liking the video, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to get notified whenever we post another nice story. And please share to your friends. Love one and family to let them know that hope shouldn't be lost completely in life. Check out our channel for other nice stories. Thanks.